Well, it's a beautiful morning. Absolutely beautiful morning. July 15th, 2020. However, the economic situation I've talked about with the Federal Reserve, where the steps that they are taking by diluting the US dollar will take them directly to the door of the wealth in China. And I have illustrated those steps that they are on that road. And if they continue diluting the US dollar because of the paranoia that is supporting them in their actions with the trillions upon trillions that they are now in, of US dollars that don't exist, will create hyperinflation in the United States and everybody's US dollars around the world, part of the secret silent tax, and will destroy the world economy. The lack of imports, possibility in the United States and China from other countries will destroy the world economy. And the devastation that will result of that is catastrophic. And if you don't get involved and find the one person who can defuse this paranoia about the virus. Remember McCarthyism, the paranoia about communism. And remember the Senate hearings where McCarthy was destroyed and the paranoia was stopped. We do need to control the virus, but we've got to stop the virus of the paranoia itself, which is being used by the Federal Reserve and the interbank people to justify in the American minds and the world's the dilution of the US dollar. Not all governments agree with what's happening and with the Federal Reserve doing this, but somebody can step forward and stop this concern over the paranoia and the use of it. It is not useful in the control of the virus to have this paranoia, and the economies do not have to be shut down in the way that they're shutting down because of the use of the paranoia. We need one person to step forward. Who is that? Do you know the person who has the influence, who can diffuse the paranoia? We need to separate the control of the virus from the use and increase in the paranoia in the world. That's not helping open up appropriately, nor understanding what really needs to be done to control the virus. People are too paranoid to be effective in controlling the virus. The virus is real. The paranoia is super real, and it's causing problems far beyond what the virus itself has caused. Hospitals say 80 to 85% of the population that tests positive for the virus experience little to no symptoms. Well, what does that tell you? Is it a big deal? No. 95% recovery rate. There are some elements of the segments of the population that are much more susceptible, and those need to be addressed with stringent controls, not the whole population and paranoia shutting down the US economy in its entirety. There's no reason for restaurants to be completely closed. There's no reason for national parks to be closed at all. Nobody gets close to nobody in a national park with 10,000s of acres. It's a high visibility ploy to create paranoia. And so people will support this dilution of the US dollar and shutting down the economy so that people think they need this infusion of cash, which they do because the paranoia has been involved. There's no reason for the economy to be shut down to the percentage that it has been. And it's enabling the Federal Reserve to march right down the road. Just look at the footsteps, look at the path in front of them. It's well laid out, right to China's treasury, the extreme wealth that that country has. The U.S. doesn't have it. The U.S. is a big economy, but it's got no money. China is a big economy, and it's got money. That's why the pathway and the steps of the Federal Reserve's actions, it's clear. There's a continuous path right to China's treasury. Now, there's one person who stopped World War II. It was Einstein. E equals MC squared. You look at the pictures of Hiroshima after the bomb, that's E equals MC squared. You look at the paranoia against communism in the United States after McCarthyism, McCarthy was destroyed. That's one person. One person, that's what it takes. My father, Dr. Robert Burke Higgins, did the first kidney transplant in the world. It takes one person for the human race to step forward. You know that person. There's one, think about it, who has the influence in the proper position and just doesn't know about it right now, needs to be contacted to come forward and destroy the paranoia that's being used by the Federal Reserve, and at the same time can preserve the good, well-intentioned, and useful and effective control of the virus at the same time. The world economy does not need to be shut down like it's being shut down to control the virus. My father was around highly communicable diseases for his whole life, and he never brought home anything, and he never used a mask, except when he was operating. So I've been around communicable diseases my whole entire frickin' life. Now, what's going on here is not necessary in the United States or the world to control this virus. Now, the Ebola virus, you better wear a mask and a suit and stay the heck away from those communities. That's not true of the coronavirus. Nobody's thinking about it. In a common sense, matter-of-fact way, in order to separate what we need as a human race in terms of economic progress and function, and the paranoia which is creating dysfunction and is not helping control the virus. We need to control the virus, and we need to control economic functioning. The two are different in this case with the virus. There's got to be one person who understands that he can create and defuse the situation here, and like a surgeon, separate the paranoia, get rid of the paranoia, and keep the progress of economic development functioning. It doesn't have to be shut down to nearly 100% like it's being done. Somebody to take a look at this and do this. One person, that's all it takes, okay? One person. Christ in his time, one person to stand up may have to sacrifice himself. That's right, one person. Buddha, one person. Who is that person that diffused McCarthyism in this country? Just a human being. Think about it. This needs to be done. Find that one person, somebody in their Rolodex, in their mind, think about who can diffuse this and get this out of the hands of the Federal Reserve's misuse of what they're doing. Now, this comes at sacrifice with me. I have been doing what I can. I've spent a couple of years putting things together. I put out countless videos about this on my channel, Sean William Higgins, playlist Econ Political. And I put this out to all my friends, associates, and colleagues around the world for a first thing. And then I put this out to 40 to 50 of the leading news agencies around the world in the leading countries, mostly in the Western world. And then I contacted all the United States governors on a number of occasions about the situation, about the Federal Reserve. And then I put out to all of Iceland's foreign ministers, finance around the world, because they took on England with the Cod Wars and other things. They're clearly, their prime minister and president are clearly independent thinkers, and they will take on NATO and such. And I thought they would be really good to try to assist to get some kind of UN intervention and stop the Federal Reserve from what it's doing. China knows what it's doing is wrong, and other countries around the world, governments know what this is not good. Somebody needs to step forward and defuse the paranoia and show the paranoia for what it is, and the Federal Reserve is how it's using it. So we can better control the virus to the segment of the populations in the world, a segment of the populations of the world who are at the highest risk. Having the virus is clearly not a big deal. Getting killed by the virus is a big deal. You've got to separate what populations are which. Then we can return our economies more quickly to functioning, maybe not 100%, but it doesn't have to be near zero like it is now. This is the paranoia, and it marches the Federal Reserve right to China's wealth. Now, in addition to Iceland, I sent this to the High Military Command of China, because they will realize the damage that to their country, and it'll get to President Xi. And hopefully somewhere along the lines, this is a kind of the shotgun approach. I'm hoping that I can locate, this missive will get to somebody who in their Rolodex can identify the person who we need, the human race needs, to come forward at this time and do this for us. Do you understand? And in addition to this, I have this missive and going out to all the U.S. churches. That's 90,300 some emails going out this week to I've gone out to all the U.S. churches, because there must be somebody who in the United States, going to the U.S. government, it would do nothing. The Congress can do nothing. They gave the Federal Reserve the right to do this. So, kind of like the fox guarding the chicken house. But I thought somebody in this number of emails, somebody in the United States would stand up and do something. It's again, one person. I am one person who's standing up against the Federal Reserve, directly confronting them on a worldwide basis. Do you understand what I'm doing? One person. Now you're looking here, here I am, rural Oregon, going out, trying to locate somebody in the world, okay, who'll do this. Now, one person, that's all it takes. Alexander Graham Bell, another relative of mine, made very little money. My father made no money at all. My family isn't big on making money. We kind of don't know how to do it. But we do know how to help the human race when it needs to be done. And now this needs to be done. It's like the boy who stuck his finger in the dike. It took one person to shoulder the responsibility, it wasn't much, And this isn't much, it's just a video, but, you know, it only takes one finger, somebody to dial that Rolodex and locate that one person who can do this for the human race. Because if this doesn't happen, if we don't stop the Federal Reserve from marching down that path to doing what they're doing, to causing this hyperinflation in the United States, then the repercussions of that around the world and what it will do to the world economies and governments, you know, we're going to see, it's just going to be horrific. That's all. Just the word for it, you know. And so there is pushback from those people because, you know, for the first time, you know, I did this in the last 2 weeks, and so all of a sudden, AT&T, my internet carrier, shut it off. Yeah, shut it off without warning, twice now, and the second time I couldn't get it turned back on, and they said it was certain reasons, and I have emails from them that wasn't true, and that they should shut it off. Yeah, so what happened there? Well, I know internet, and I couldn't, in the middle of this campaign, I'm trying to create some kind of a blitzkrieg to stop, find out somebody somewhere around the world who will do this for us. So yeah, so I had to get a different carrier, and I'm still reeling with the difficulties of all that situation. And then my Social Security check, my sole, because I'm 72, my sole means of support was returned from my bank. They said, oh, well, it didn't suit the, I don't know, some deposit, that was last month, right? That was returned. My sole income for last month was returned, and it didn't show up this month. Yeah, and it still hasn't. It's the 15th of the month, so I've gone basically a month and a half, and on my sole source of support. First time ever for me that I've received Social Security in 20 years, right on the heels of when I'm attacking head-to-head, the Federal Reserve, which is a branch office of the interbank people. One of the most powerful groups in the world, economically. Well, what do you think? It's just a coincidence that I've got 1 month return, and the next month nowhere in sight. I've called them, they say, oh, it'll be 1 or 2 weeks. Well, we don't have any record of it not having been sent. We don't have any record. Oh, that's very, very interesting. And like I posted on Facebook, why is it when you do something good, the bad guys come after you, but the good guys don't? Well, you figure it out. Well, I could use some support because I got no frickin' money for groceries for the last 2 weeks. I got bills due, and you know, I could use $500 until that money comes from something. And if you want to get money to me, you can use PayPal.
Okay, this is it. You can send any donations or whatever you feel like to this phone number, my phone number, 971-277-0894, or to my email address, Sean Higgins 888 at iCloud.com. That's SHAWNHIGGINS 888 at iCloud.com, through PayPal.com. And this is regarding the diluting of the U.S. dollars. It's just it's time to stop it. We can't let it go on. It's going to be very bad for us and so many other countries as well.
And you know, you can send any money there if you're good at making money and you can help that kind of things out. That'd be great. As I say, this is all I can do because my family, we don't make money, but we can do without much, and we can do good things. You know, the boy in the dike, you know, he had 10 fingers, he only used one. No big deal then. Anyway, so yeah, again, just like McCarthyism diffused the paranoia about communism and returned the American psyche to a little bit of normalcy, which is was a very healthy thing to do. Um, this needs to be done in order to return, get the world back on the right economic path and the right psychological path. Again, this needs to be done right away. Just look in your Rolodex, think, contact somebody, and we've got to find that somebody who can diffuse the situation here and control this virus appropriately and the economies appropriately, and stop this paranoia with people riding their bikes around in broad daylight with a mask on.
Okay, to sum this up, just pure and simple, the economic landscape of the world is vast and infinite into what steps you can go. Now, given the landscape of where the Federal Reserve Corporation stands today, if you look at their pathway that their feet are traveling, as has been outlined, why is it that it leads directly to the wealth of China going into their pocket? That's it, in a nutshell. Why is it? And this will cause the extreme destruction of the world's economies. As you can see, as has been outlined, it's obvious that these steps will create, along the way, a wake that will cause the destruction of the world economies. Just think it through again. What's going to happen if we get this extreme devaluation going of the US dollar around the world? The full implications of that. And this will lead the Federal Reserve and interbank people directly into the Treasury, access to the Treasury and the wealth of China. Why is that? Do you think this is a coincidence? If you can see it, and if you had the obscene, insatiable greed for money that the interbank people have and have exhibited in the past, and the effectiveness that they have done this time and time again around the world with all their branch offices, etc. Why is it there's a pathway directly in front of the footsteps of the Federal Reserve, and they have acknowledged they're going down that path to create all the electronic US dollars necessary to deal with this virus? Why is it they're going down the path that leads directly into the wealth of China? And given that you can see that this is going to cause such a vast, widespread destruction of the U.S. economy, China's economy, and the world economy as a result, what kind of greed can you imagine is in the minds of the U.S. Federal Reserve Corporation and Interbank, that you think that they're going to stop of their own accord? I'm just saying, this is a sum up that the pathway that the Federal Reserve is going down, the roadway is very clearly laid out. They're doing 60 miles an hour, and it clearly right ahead is a roadside that says China's treasury, China's wealth of the population and the government. Why is it then that they're on that road, that they're following it intentionally. You don't have to think that they're doing it out of greed. I'm just saying they're on that road and they're going there. You want to speculate on their motive? Go ahead. Waste your time, because it doesn't matter their motive. If they do that and it destroys the world economies, as it will, as it's clearly it will, why allow it to happen? Why allow it to happen? The car has to be stopped, that's all. The car has to be stopped, or else. Okay, this is it. You can send any donations or whatever you feel like to this phone number, my phone number, 971-277-0894, or to my email address, SeanHiggins888 at iCloud.com. That's ShawnHiggins 888 at iCloud.com, through PayPal.com. And this is regarding the diluting of the U.S. dollars. It's just it's time to stop it. We can't let it go on. It's going to be very bad for us and so many other countries as well. Now, here's an interesting another point about the way that the extreme devaluation of the U.S. dollar causing hyperinflation in the United States, to the extent that the U.S. won't be able to import anything, as is typical with a country with hyperinflation, because everybody's money goes to zero within that country that has that currency. Aside from the fact that China is like the number 2 holder of U.S. treasuries, it's interesting to see here another way that the devaluation and lack of imports will affect China severely. Notice that the flow of imports, the large red arrow that's coming from China into the United States, is so much bigger than any other country at all. So, you see the Federal Reserve marching down that road, creating the hyper devaluation of the U.S. dollar, to the extent that we have hyperinflation in the United States and people's money goes to zero when the inflation rate goes like Venezuela, 1,000,000% a year, supposed to be 10 million% this year. Nobody has any purchasing power within that country to import into Venezuela, which is typical of hyperinflation in the country. And in the United States, if this is allowed to happen, the United States citizens and businesses will have no money to do imports. And then you see what's going to happen to China. The lack of imports, it will so severely bring China to its economic knees. It will need a great infusion of cash, which the interbank people will be ready to offer, and as well as to twist the arm, as they do with countries who resist them setting up a branch office in their country. China will be, and President Xi will be in very difficult position economically, or lack of the U.S. importing its goods and the lack of value of its U.S. treasuries going to virtually zero. And his country will be so economically has to deal with the lack of the United States importing and the money that his country would get from that, and the loss of income from the U.S. treasuries that they've got so much of. They're second in the world in ownership. He will need cash, and the interbank people, of course, This is what they do. This is how they get countries to accept a central bank. Their central bank, their branch office established as what they call in the United States the Central Bank of the United States, the Federal Reserve. Well, it is not a bank. It is a for-profit corporation whose mission is to make money off its role as manipulating the interest rates of the United States and printing the dollar and charging interest on the valueless dollars of electronic credits that they're creating. You know, it's just a scam. But that's all they care about, is to twist the arm of countries and force them to allow one of their branch offices, which they're going to try to do with President Xi in China. And President Xi is going to be in very serious difficulty given what will happen with the lack of funds that they will have, and from U.S. imports, as you see the trading partner of the major trading partner in the United States. So this is just a second-prong attack, and yes, the interbank people know about this, of course. They planned this to get to China a long time ago. They have a business plan, 5-year plan, etc., just like any corporation, year-to-year profit growth. This is all part of their business plan. They've looked at this map and others in detail for a long time. But this is where they're going. You can speculate on their motive, but they are going down this path. You want to say why? It's a coincidence or whatever? It doesn't matter. If they are allowed to go down this path and escalate the devaluation of the US dollar so that this happens, octopus things that are going on here, the entire world will have such difficulty dealing with these two trading partners. The terrible exclusion of trade around the world will devastate world economies. And this is why it's so serious that the Federal Reserve actions of their increasingly creating trillions of more credits, debits in diluting the US dollar. It just has to be stopped. The point is to deal with raising the U.S. economy by opening up it again, because right now it's being shut down unnecessarily severely because of the paranoia. And the Federal Reserve loves this paranoia because people believe that they have to have all this stimulus when in fact they don't. They need to look at it more carefully, and businesses can be opened up to deal with the virus at the same time if people can stop this paranoia and open up businesses in places that can be opened up partially in certain ways, so we can function again. But people have to let go of the paranoia in order to assess this in a reasonable manner. And that can't be done, and that's why the paranoia needs to be diffused by somebody to come forward, like was done with the McCarthyism, and when that was taken care of, how we return to normalcy, and that's what needs to be done now.
Now, something that is maybe overlooked and not and misunderstood is that the interbank people are not going to waltz into China and abscond with trillions of dollars in their pockets. That's not what they do. They have a different plan for that wealth in that country, and that is what they always do, is they wrestle the government to the ground and force it to give them a monopoly on the currency printing, printing debits and charging interest on that phony, worthless electronic stuff, electronics, and then to get the monopoly on regulating the interest rates. Now, that's what they want, because they are able then to create these, quote, business cycles, boom and bust. Long term, it's a long-term plan to extract, it's a money farm, just like a farmer replants crop year after year after the same land. In the United States, for instance, they lowered the interest rates in the late 1800s, and then at some point they stopped refinancing and crashed the real estate market. And then in 29, they lowered the interest rates to zero because they have exclusive right to do that. And when the stock market heated up like heck, they crashed it by raising the margin from 10 to 50%. Of course, that crashed the market. And of course, they shorted, and they had tremendous profits off that, as did J.P. Morgan, because he was working with them. And then, of course, the real estate market in the Great Depression, they continued to cause the wholesale bankruptcy of farms, and they picked those up, pennies on the dollar. Then in 2008, again, lower the interest rate. It's just part of their habit, what they do when they get into your country. And the real estate market, as you remember, people were flipping the houses, and you could buy houses with nothing down and lie about what your income was. And then at some point they said, no more refinancing. It crashed the real estate market. And again, they could pick things up, pennies on the dollar. And so now, here we are, the interest rate, they put them again at zero. And the stock market is again 29,000. It was 1,072, now 29,000. And again, Warren Buffett is saying this is a good time to get into the market, just like J.P. Morgan did, of course. And but now things are a little different, because they want to create a hyperinflation to cause President Xi to allow them to put one of their branch offices in China. And that way they can control the interest rates there again. This is what they do. And this is all they want. They said this is all we want. The currency and the interest rates. And then they can just create the boom and bust cycles. Boom and bust. And they do it time after time after time. Wake up, people. And so that is their real spearhead of what's going on here with the U.S. dollar. Is to get a central bank of theirs to set up in China long term for 100 years, 200 years, as they've done in other countries in the U.S., and just control the interest rates and set back and create the boom and bust cycles. And they know when they're going to do it. They know when to short and long the markets or whatever it is. And that's what's going on in China, and that's what they intend to do. It's going to be very, very difficult to stop them.